Morning, everybody. It's Wednesday morning. We're here for a Mike's MMA Picks Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown show brought to you by BetDSI as well as MMA Oddsbreaker. UFC Fight Night Jacksonville. 11 fights. Bang this out pretty quickly here. Let's start with the first fight on the docket. We've got Chase Sherman taking on Ike Villanueva. Villanueva, former middleweight, coming in on short notice. Both of these guys are 16-9 record for Villanueva, 7,800 in DraftKings, plus 130 at the underdog, plus 130 at the betting window. Chase Sherman, Vanilla Gorilla, we know him very well through the years. Been a consistent fighter to fade. 8,400 in DraftKings for Chase Sherman in this spot, minus 160 favorite. Unbelievable that Chase Sherman is the favorite here, but when you dig a little bit deeper, you look at the the size difference here. Chase Sherman, massive heavyweight. I remember Anthony Hamilton in years past. You look at somebody who fits the bill for a heavyweight, but then does not possess the skills. Chase Sherman seems to be one of those fighters. He has a 6-inch reach advantage. He's going to be coming in about 20 pounds heavier. This has heavyweight slobber knocker written all over it. DraftKings, I'll be honest, you may want to take a stab at Villanueva in this spot, just considering Sherman against Abdurakhimov, lights out. He's Alex Nicholson put his lights out. Villanueva is nothing right home about either, but this is one of those high variance heavyweight fights. So give me Chase Sherman, but I'm not making a play on this fight. Next up, we got men's 145 pounders. Typically, these guys do fight at 135 pounds, but moving up a weight class on short notice, we've got Eubanks-Kelleher, Long Islander, 7,100 in DraftKings, plus 165 underdog, coming off of a submission victory. Fully aware of his guillotine capabilities. Hunter Azure, 8-0, 9,100 in DraftKings, minus 195 at the betting window. Azure, 28 years old, spent a good chunk of time at the MMA lab and followed Eddie Cha over to Scottsdale, where he's been at Fight Ready. Came down from Montana. Significant wrestling background, great motor, great chin. I saw him get dropped in one of his earlier fights, but talking about resiliency, got back up, got the takedown, and I was impressed with Azure's fight against Brad Katona. There's a significant reach advantage in this spot for Hunter. One thing we should mention, he had a full camp. He put in an 8-week camp to fight Umar Nurmagomedov. And Eubanks-Kelleher, very scrappy, fearless, fully aware of his strengths, very scrappy, decent striking, solid athlete. But one thing about Kelleher in this spot is he's coming in basically off the couch. He's been staying active with home workouts and pad work. And in New York during quarantine, hadn't been able to get out. He put in a few days. This fight's taking place on less than 2 weeks' notice. So those are all glaring signs that point towards Hunter in this spot. Couple of things about the Katona fight. I know Hunter was impressive on the Contender Series, but you look at very intelligent coaches working with him. But so does Hunter in this spot. And the free play of the card was 1.5 units on Hunter. Azure at minus 170. Sitting at minus 195 right now. This fight is expected to go to a decision at minus 225. Let's see how it plays out. Give me Hunter. Next up, we have Gabriel Benitez taking on Omar Morales. This fight's up at 155 pounds. Gabriel Benitez moving up. 7,400 in DraftKings for Mowgli, plus 155 underdog. Taking on Omar Morales, coming in at 8,800, minus 185. Morales, older fighter, 34 years of age, undefeated, 9-0. Fights out of Florida, so this isn't foreign soil for him. He did go and beat Ma overseas. In this spot, I do have concerns about Morales and his output. Benitez is going to be looking to land more. I have concerns about Benitez's durability. 21-7 record. Remember the Jason Knight fight? The kicks may be at play in this spot. I don't suspect this fight's going to hit the ground, although Benitez is fighting out of AKA. Doesn't seem to possess the groundwork, the ground skills. This fight is lined not to go the distance at minus 115. I think it will go the distance, although Morales is a heavy striker. I think Morales is going to be landing the more significant strikes. His head movement will be an asset here. And I didn't like the way Benitez finished that fight against Sadiq Youssef. I have a feeling that that may come back to haunt him here. Maybe a little gunshot. Taking on Sarah Moras. Sarah Moras, 6-5 record, $7,000 in DraftKings, plus 295 at the betting window. This is a fight that's expected to go to a decision at minus 255. Eubanks, one of the highest priced fighters on the board at 9,200, minus 385 favorite. I'll right off the bat, I do not trust Sujara Eubanks. The way she pooped the bed against Vettori-Roberson, I still have a bad taste in my mouth about that. But we can't let recency bias affect the way we play in DraftKings, especially people may look to fade Eubanks because of her price tag. 3-inch, apologize for that. These folks have identical reaches in this spot. Eubanks is going to have the better striking. Eubanks also solid jiu-jitsu practitioner. Not the best gas tank. If this fight does go late, Moras may be live here. I have to pick Eubanks, though. It's crazy. She has a 4-4 record, and this is somebody who was on Valentina Shevchenko's case about wanting a shot at the belt. Can you believe that? Give me Eubanks to win in this spot. Next up, men's lightweights. We've got Michael Johnson taking on Thiago-Moises. Thiago-Moises, 12-4 record, 8,200 in DraftKings, minus 120 at the betting window. Moises fighting out of ATT. Michael Johnson, been around the block, 19-15 record. Coming in here with a 3-inch reach advantage, $8,000 in DraftKings, minus 110 at BetDSI. 33 years of age for Michael Johnson. I'll tell you what, man. You watch Michael Johnson, he just finds ways to lose fights. Josh Emmett fight, winning that fight handily. Great footwork, staying at range, and it ended up costing him. He ate a huge bomb in that spot. Lights out. Then you have the Stevie Ray fight, winning that fight handily, and gets taken down and just cannot find his way back to his feet and almost gets finished in that spot. here, I went back and you look at matchup specifics here. There's a huge speed discrepancy. I'll be honest. Michael Johnson, he is going to be the much quicker fighter. He also has solid footwork. Moises is a plotter with tremendous jiu-jitsu credentials. Been at it since he was 8 years old and comes from a family of combat veterans. In this combat sports veterans, I mean, in this spot, Moises, I like his durability. I also know he has a clear path to victory if this fight hits the ground, and I suspect at some point, even though we haven't seen the best takedown defense or takedown offense from him, I have a hunch this fight, just because of Michael Johnson's his mental lapses in fights, it's most likely going to happen here. And Moises doesn't throw combinations, so he's going to need to get this fight to the ground in order to win. So I suspect he's going to get this fight against the cage. Michael Johnson's going to make a mistake, probably in the second round, and Moises is going to make him pay for it. When you look at the way the fight may play out, though, Michael Johnson could potentially come in and get ahead on the scorecards, especially big time by volume, and that's something that you have to be concerned about. I'm going to be picking Moises to win in this spot, though. Next up, we have heavyweights who are actually teammates. Azure-Arlovski taking on Felipe Lins. Felipe Lins, 14-3 record, former PFL fighter, fighting out of ATT. Minus 172 favorite over at BetDSI, 8,500 at DraftKings. Azure-Arlovski, the ageless wonder, 41 years old, 7,700 DraftKings plus 142. This fight, in a few ways, it's similar to the one that we just went over, in that Azure-Arlovski is going to look to stay at range, look to use his reach, 6.5-inch reach in that spot. These guys are very familiar with themselves. This fight isn't expected to go to a decision at minus 155. I wonder how things went down when these two were sparring. I have a hunch that Arlovski may have been getting the better of the young buck, although Lins is not very young, 34 years of age. I did like what I saw from Lins in his PFL fights, but then you look at who he was fighting. That Copeland was a sitting duck in that spot. Arlovski's going to be moving around. In the end, I'm going to be picking Lins here because Arlovski's durability is beginning to come into question. Had his lights put out by I believe a counter hook from Rosenstruck, and look at his record, 28-19, and his first fight, believe it or not, was brutally knocked out. Had a long run, making lots of money, Azure-Arlovski that is, but I have to pick Felipe Lins in this spot. Next up, we have middleweights. We've got Marvin Vettori taking on Roberson. Roberson, 7,300 in DraftKings, plus 160 at the betting window. Marvin Vettori, 8,900 and minus 190 right now, which I don't think that's a bad price to pay. If you were able to get him down at minus 170, minus 160, things feel more comfortable in that spot, but have a hunch we're going to see Vettori use his versatility in this fight. Style bender, Adesanya called Vettori a blockhead, and that's really, I mean, you look at him, he's never been finished. He's an antagonist. In this spot, Roberson, beat Kopylov in his last fight, and they had a pretty intense 3-round affair. But Kopylov didn't look like he was ready for the UFC. Body wasn't ready in that spot, and Roberson capitalized on mistakes made by Kopylov in that spot. In this spot, Vettori is a veteran here, even though he's only 26 years old. It's wild. I have a hunch that we're going to see Vettori and Paulo Costa end up clashing within the next 2 years. I have a hunch they're going to be fighting. Vettori, you want to have Master Rafael Cordero in your corner. I know it didn't work out last time out with Fabricio Verdum, but Vettori, young gun, beat a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in his octagon debut a few years ago, and he does possess ground skills. Roberson, although he had been putting in work with Corey Anderson, has a kickboxing background, and I don't rate Roberson very highly. He's very athletic. Both of these fighters are southpaws, but I have to pick Vettori to win this spot and run away with a decision victory. Next up, we head to the men's 135-pound division. We have Ray Borg, who has been banished from the flyweight division right now, taking on Ricky Simon. Ricky Simon, 8,600 in DraftKings, -162 favorite over at BetDSI. Ray Borg, +132 at the betting window, 7,600 in DraftKings. You're going to want a piece of this fight in DraftKings. It has Scramble Fest written all over it. Borg, 13-4 overall record. Ricky Simon, 15-3. These guys came up around the same time. Ricky Simon, undefeated as an amateur, has a tremendous motor. When he lands takedowns, he isn't looking to hold you there. He'll let you back to your feet and then start unloading with punches. Not the most accurate striker, but he does throw for volume, and he has some striking deficiencies. Ricky Simon, I'm interested to see what he looks like when he arrives into the octagon tonight. In the past, he's been pretty lathered up, and he'll need to be lathered up in this spot against Ray Borg, who's going to be looking to land takedowns, be in top control, and win rounds. If Ricky Simon is lathered up and looking to keep this on the feet, he should have a tremendous advantage in that regard. But you can't just recommend, just stay on the feet against Ray Borg. Ray Borg is relentless. He is going to be looking for the takedown at all times, and he'll be looking to stay in top position, as I previously mentioned. A couple of things here. Ricky Simon switched camps for this fight and was actually supposed to be on the April 11th card, and that fight was supposed to take place in Portland. He moved to Team Oyama, and Team Oyama has a pretty solid camp down there. So you have Ricky Simon who's not coming off the couch in this spot. He should have decent cardio. He has a 7-inch reach advantage. Ray Borg traditionally does not fare well coming up. He did look okay on the scales. By the way, in the previous fight, we have to mention that Carl Roberson came in overweight in his matchup, and I have concerns that Vettori was correct that Roberson may have been broken in that capacity. Back to this fight. So Ray Borg, in the pre-fight interviews here, you can go back to the media scrum. He was bringing up retiring at 34. He's only 26 years old, but it's interesting. He's talking about being in the game since he was 13 years old when he started mixed martial arts training. This should be one hell of a fight, scrappy fight. Ricky Simon, though, to me, has a number of clear advantages as far as strength goes, as far as size when they get inside of the octagon. He's not going to fade late in fights. And although Simon has a tendency to get caught, you watch his last fight against Rob Font, and I was very impressed with that performance despite the loss. Striking looked up to snuff there, and he did eat a number of Rob Font punches. Give me Ricky Simon to win in this fight. Next up, we have the people's main event of the evening. We've got Drew Dober taking on Alexander-Hernandez. Great fight. Drew Dober, who in my eyes should be fighting at welterweight comfortably. He fought Frank Camacho at welterweight and looked very impressive up there. 8,300 for Drew Dober, minus 120. And then we've got Alexander-Hernandez, 7,900, minus 110. Alexander-Hernandez has not been the same fighter since taking on Donald Cerrone. Really surprising in that matchup. I was very high on Alex Hernandez, and in this spot, he's probably going to come in and be relentless. That's got to be his game plan. He's going to be looking to take Drew Dober down at all costs. What makes Alexander Hernandez a solid fighter is his ability to change levels and keep you thinking. He'll throw punches and bunches on the feet, but then he'll change levels and go shoot for a takedown and hold you down. Drew Dober has shown deficiencies on the ground. I have a hunch he's going to have to catch Alexander Hernandez coming in and earn his respect and try to keep Alex Hernandez at distance, which is going to be tough because that typically isn't Alexander Hernandez's game. The Trinaldo fight I thought may have been an anomaly, but sometimes you get the confidence knocked out of you and you're a changed fighter. Speaking of confidence, Drew Dober is coming in with a boatload of confidence, has the much better striking in this spot, comes from a great camp. Alexander Hernandez fighting out of Texas and has really stuck with his same core group. Dober out of Colorado, fighting with Justin Gaethje, sparring with Justin Gaethje. I'm looking forward to seeing Trevor Whitman in the corner of Drew Dober. Drew Dober could potentially knock Alexander Hernandez out in this spot. I also don't see Dober completely fading here. I know he's the much more muscular fighter and is typically a Muay Thai fighter, but I don't think he's going to get frustrated in this spot. Alexander Hernandez is going to be looking to frustrate him, hold him down, and I'm going to be picking Drew Dober to win in this spot, but I think there are other better opportunities on this card if you're looking to make a play. It should be a very close fight, and the fight is expected to go to a decision at minus 145. Next up, we have washed heavyweights and light heavyweights here. We've got Ovin St. Preux taking on Ben Rothwell. Ben Rothwell, 37-12. Probably should have retired about 4 or 5 fights ago. 7,500 in DraftKings, plus 115. Underdog. Both of these guys have 80-inch reaches. Ovin St. Preux had the kitchen sink thrown at him last time out. 8,700 for Ovin St. Preux. That's a heavy price to pay for a minus 145 underdog. Fight's not expected to go to a decision at minus 160. Ovin St. Preux, who knows? He may come up heavyweight and show a bit more durability. That gas tank is probably going to suffer, though. But you look across the fight, and you've got Ben Rothwell, who has one of the worst gas tanks out there. He just plods forward, and you know what you're going to get out of his book. You watch. If you have time, I recommend going watching Ben Rothwell taking on Cain Velasquez back in the day. Velasquez was just pouring it on, and Rothwell would not stop. He's a zombie. It takes a hell of a lot to put him out. You saw what Arlovski did to him, and he just wouldn't go away. And this spot, Ovin St. Preux is going to have to get Rothwell out of there. Rothwell isn't going to go silently into the night, but I'm going to be picking Ovin St. Preux here. I think he's a little bit fresher, a little bit higher volume here, although you look at St. Preux's fight in his last match, and hard to trust either of these fighters. But my lean is Ovin St. Preux, and I'll make him my pick. Next up, main event of the evening. We have we have light heavyweights, 205 pounds. Glover-Teixeira taking on Anthony Smith. Both of these guys have a 76-inch reach, almost a 10-year age difference. Here we got Anthony Smith, who does have, you look at the amount of fights that these guys had, they both, in fight years, they each have a ton of mileage on them. Glover-Teixeira, 30-7 record. Anthony Smith, 33-14. Anthony Smith coming off of the John Jones fight, where I'll be honest, he didn't show me much. He survived. John Jones was trying to get out of there with the win. Didn't take many chances. But look at Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith didn't take many chances in that fight either. $9,000 in DraftKings for Anthony Smith, minus 185 favorite. And then look at the other side of the fight, 7,200 for Glover-Teixeira, plus 155 at the betting window. Glover-Teixeira, if he was just a little bit quicker, if he had a little bit better chin, I would trust him in this spot with a lot of my money. But he has shown that he can get caught and almost finished a number of times. But his resiliency is second to none. And he's not the greatest athlete. Glover-Teixeira, though, his jiu-jitsu, in my eyes, is tremendously underrated still to this day. I was at the Cannonier fight, and I've seen him a number of times in person and watched the way he corners fighters. Glover is a very wise elder statesman of the game, and Anthony Smith is a savvy vet too. But one thing I've noticed is Anthony Smith can become very sloppy at times, overcommit, and I have a hunch that may happen in this fight. This could play out very similar to the Shogun Rua fight, where Anthony Smith comes in and lands an elbow or a clean strike off the break, or coming in and puts Glover-Teixeira's lights out. This fight isn't supposed to go to a decision at minus 300. But Teixeira's not an easy out. This isn't the Rumble Johnson fight. That was a number of years ago. It could end that way, but I think there's a lot of value on Teixeira in this spot, especially at DraftKings. You want to keep an eye there. That you watch the Kudalaba fight, you watch other fights. Not yet, Glover-Teixeira says. And if you go back and watch that fight, it's a really telling sign. Glover-Teixeira looked phenomenal on the scales yesterday, and the old vet, the old warhorse, I think he's just got a little bit left in him. I'm going to be picking Glover-Teixeira in that spot. I understand a lot of the advantages are headed in the favor of Anthony Smith, and he could come out here, Anthony Smith, and look like a world beater. But I'll be picking Glover-Teixeira to win in this spot and win by submission. If he gets on top of Anthony Smith, I think it's going to be game over there. But Anthony Smith could come out and get the knockout. We'll see. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. You can follow me over at Mike's MMA Picks on Twitter. I want to thank BetDSI and MMA Oddsbreaker for hosting the podcast. You can also head over, follow my tracked plays at betmma.tips, and head over to MMA Oddsbreaker premium section where I've got a couple of plays posted. Want to thank everybody. Remember, go get what's yours. It's your time to shine. Fights are tonight, Wednesday night. Go get it, baby.